Welcome back to another edition of Captain's Counseling Corner. It has been a while since I have done one of these videos, but I have always wanted to get back to it, and I have wanted to do more of these videos, but I've just been lazy and quite frankly haven't found enough time to do it. But if you just didn't realize that opening introduction, if you can guess what movie that came from and you make a comment, the first comment will earn 5 bonus points, which I'll tell you what those 5 bonus points will give you later. So comment down below if you know what movie that came from. One of the best movies of all time, in my favorite top 10. So I have been wanting to basically do this for a while, and today the goal is to basically set up a series, hopefully a series of videos to come, explaining something that I am very passionate about. I've been passionate about this for a very long time, and in each video in the series, I'm basically going to try to lay out step by step or point by point something that I have basically started about a year and a half ago. So last winter, I guess it would be winter of 2019, I started writing a book. And I finished the beginning of the introduction. And in a year and a half, I haven't written anything else. Because the first thing you have to know about me, if you don't know anything else, is that I am a talker. I love to talk, I love to debate, I love to get back and forth with people and get their ideas and their thoughts. I definitely don't like writing. I've had several people tell me that, number one, I'm a terrible writer, and I'm terrible because I don't like it. I remember when I was in my first year of university.
Dad, what are you doing here?
I'm going to college. What do you think?
I think you're nuts.
As a freshman, and I got my first academic paper back, and my professor wrote in big letters, "You write like you talk." I'm like, yeah, isn't that the way you're supposed to write? So it's definitely something that I don't want to spend a lot of time on. So the idea of writing a book is something that just really bothers me. It just makes me so unmotivated. It's incredible. And if you haven't heard this before, writing is the lowest form of communication. So why should I spend my time doing it when I can do it like this? So basically, the purpose of this video, and hopefully this series of the videos coming along after this, is going to basically be a book in video form. And I'm hoping that I can convey my thoughts, and maybe one day I'll get the book actually written and make it an ebook that I can put onto Amazon. But that's basically secondary or third or fourth on my mind at this point. But what I need to do is I definitely need to get this stuff on record for myself more than anything else, because I'm very passionate about that. So today we are just going to set up basically what we're going to be talking about when it comes to relationships. And as you could see in that picture, the title of my book was not very positive. And I have been very passionate about this for a long time. So let's get started, and I'll give you a little bit of background before we actually get into the meat of what we're going to talk about in these videos. So relationships is very kind of relative term, but I want to focus more specifically, as you could see in the title of my book, on friendships. And I want to start with giving you kind of a background story that has led me to this place that I am today. It was the year 2000. Actually, it was 1999, turning into 2000. So it was New Year's Eve of 1999. It was basically the Y2K scary pandemic. We're actually in one right now. But then everybody was worried, what's going to happen when it changes over to 2000? Is everything going to go black? Is the computers going to go down? Is all the electrical stuff going to go crazy? That was the scary thing at that time. Every year for about 4 or 5 years, there was a bunch of us friends, a group of friends that would gather at this guy's house. And it was a perfect house, in a suburb, nice little yard, nice little neighborhood. And we would just go there for New Year's Eve. Obviously in Ohio, Columbus, Ohio, it was freaking cold in the middle of winter, January 1st. And usually there'd be snow, so at midnight we had this tradition of where we would run around with bare feet, whether it was snowing or not. And it was freaking cold. And then the great thing about this situation, besides the tradition that we had, was that afterwards, being so freezing cold, running around the neighborhood in the snow with no shoes on or socks or anything, they had a hot tub in the backyard. And it was perfect for this tradition, because afterwards you would just jump in the hot tub and you would just sit there and talk with a bunch of guys. Usually it was just a bunch of guys. Later it started getting a mixed group of married couples and girls and all kinds of things. But at the beginning, at this specific time that I remember, after the ball had dropped,
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, happy 2000!
And everything was safe and there was no Y2K tragedy. We all got into the hot tub, and there was about 6 guys that had been, at that time, a closer kind of friendship. We had the same belief systems, we had the same ideas, relatively speaking. We had the same framework from which we approached what we thought and what we believed. And we were sitting in this hot tub, and we were just talking, and at the end of the night, I realized when I looked down at my hands that I was pruning. We had been in the hot tub long enough that my whole body was starting to prune. And at that moment, I had a huge realization that has led me all the way to today. And that realization was this: we had been in that hot tub for about an hour and a half. And in that hour and a half, we had laughed, we had cried, we had laughed again, we had kind of took each other's ideas, debated, we had farted, we had talked about masturbation, we talked about God, we talked about everything from high to low, from surface to deep. And in that whole time, I just sat there and thought, this is what I want my life to be. This is exactly what life should be. And I remember thinking, life should be where you're with a group of people that you connect with, and you can at any moment be laughing and then crying and then laughing again, talking about sports, talking about the big things of life, the second level questions, as well as the first level questions. And I remember having this epiphany that I want more than anything the rest of my life to be surrounded with a group of men or women, specifically men probably is more easy to accomplish, where you can really share deeply into each other's lives, that there is a friendship that is closer than a brother. And I always wanted to live like that. And as I went through college and then afterwards, I experienced a level of that friendship for a certain period of time. But after that, it kind of went to its own situation or to its own life. Because typically the way things are done, at least in the United States and pretty much everywhere in the world, is when you're young, you have a group of friends, you maybe have a best friend that you always hang out with. In my case, my best friend's name was Nick, and we got into trouble together, we got arrested, and from kindergarten, actually first or second grade, we were best friends all the way through middle school, and then we kind of went our separate ways in high school. But he was my lifelong friend, my best friend, all the way through. Most people, at the beginning in that movie, you always around the age of 12 or whatever used to have your friends that you were really close to. But then we go to college, you get your career, you get your degree, and then we go to wherever our career takes us. So basically, it's like our career or making money is kind of like the first thing that we put as our responsibility or as our notion of where we're going to be in the future. And then wherever we go or wherever we end up based off that, we tend to try to create a group of friends in that situation. But what I always thought and what I've always challenged people to think about is, what about reversing or changing that priority list? Instead of having, your career, then maybe a wife or a girlfriend, and then maybe your friends, what about putting friendships or relationships as your number one? And then wherever you go with those relationships and those friendships that are your backbone to who you are, that's where you find a job. It could be in Cambodia. It could be in Africa. It can be in South Korea. But it's the friendships first, and then the job and everything else is prioritized after that. So this is kind of the basis in which I want to approach my life, as well as this series of videos that I want to talk about. I believe in it so much that I actually got a tattoo. You can kind of see it. And in that tattoo is basically the 3 things that I think are essential to having a deep friendship. And we're going to talk from the beginning about defining what it is to have a real friendship, or how I would define it as having a real friendship. Now, I've talked about this with a bunch of people, debated, shared thoughts, had some great ideas, reflections about this, and I have no kind of belief that most people are going to agree with my idea of what this looks like in a day-to-day life. So I have no fantasy that people are going to agree with it. But nonetheless, I believe it. And I believe it with all my heart. And so I'm going to share it, and I'm going to share it step by step to try to convince you that this is the true life to live. I almost sound religious. I'm not religious. We're not talking about Jesus, although a lot of what can be reflected in Jesus' life is a relationship kind of idea or mentality. But I'm not going there, so don't worry about that. But I do think that this is something that, in a time like this specifically, when I think this situation in the world has hopefully sparked some people to reconsider just how important relationships and family are. Because when the shit hits the fan, it all boils down to the relationships that you have. Everyone, almost everyone, when they get to their deathbed and someone says to them, "What's the one thing that you would regret?" It always comes to relationships. It's always it's usually never, "Oh, I wish I had another $50. I wish I had that." It's usually about relationships, not wanting to die alone. This is foundational. This is very, very important. I hope that this has actually sparked your interest at least a little bit to continue to the next video when I make it, to really start digging into this idea of what is true friendship. What is the thing that we should be chasing after more than anything else, the gold that is actually attainable if we can put our minds to it. So I know this sounds very, very different from the videos that I've made, and it might surprise you, but I find this very, very important enough to make videos and to really focus on it, at least for now, until I maybe get lazy again. So hopefully you stick around for the next video and you look at it and you start to think about it, and maybe even on YouTube discussions, or maybe through different ways we can start to debate this with each other, and we can reflect on it, get different ideas, and move forward together. So we'll see you at the next video. Hopefully this has sparked your interest. This is the Captain saying, peace out.